The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bit by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing range. I found an enchanted hurricane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. Dying alien helped me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Welcome to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is André. I'm your host, and big thanks to Ookla the Mok for our theme song, Superpowers. Not only do I have to thank them for providing our theme song, I also have to thank them for being my guest today, in which I speak with Rand Bellavia and Adam English of Ookla the Mok about their careers, about their partnership, about their music, and about their lives up to this point. And man, I have to tell you, it is a true honor. I've talked to a lot of people on this podcast that I've looked up to over the years, people that I've grown to look up to by getting into their work. But Ookla the Mok is a band that I have loved dearly for more than half of my life, I would have to say. I was introduced to them by David Cutler, a good friend, former roommate, and a former guest on the show. He's a big fan of Aquaman, and I believe he introduced me to the song Arthur Curry, which is about Aquaman. And from there on, I got to listen to their music and fell in love, because as someone growing up in rural Nova Scotia, I didn't really have the opportunity to have a lot of friends that were into the same things as me when it came to comics and sci-fi and fantasy cartoons, etc., because a lot of them had grown out of that. I mean, they were still friends, but we couldn't really talk on that level. So finding this music and listening to it at length, and it really provided sort of a feeling of community for me, that there are bands out there, or a band at least, one, that was out there singing about the things that I was into, about the esoteric references and very rare things that not a lot of people would get, but you would if you were into that community. And they really celebrate it and sing it, and it's great music, upbeat, fun, and I can't even begin to describe how much of an influence it's had on me growing up. So it was a real honor to speak to these two men and to discuss their careers and their partnership. One thing that I did note, just from talking to them, and I think you may get as well while listening to the conversation, is how much these two men really connect. Like they after the talk, Rand sent me some pictures of things that Adam had worked on in the past, because I'd mentioned to him, just thanking him for being on the show, that I was really floored by Adam's background, which we discuss in the conversation, which is he's totally done his basement up to look like a mad scientist lab. And it's truly amazing. Like, this is film quality work. It's fantastic. And so when I mentioned that, Rand had sent me some other pictures of costumes that Adam had worked on over the years. One being a replica of the Fly costume. I think it's more from the Vincent Price version of the film. And also a Luke riding on the back of Yoda costume that he had made. Both are fantastic. The Fly costume particularly was beautiful, like film quality work. If I were to see that in a film, and not just like a cheesy indie film, it was very believable, and it's fantastic. So he sent me these things with pride, and the way he talks about Adam during the interview tells me just how much, he's like a cheerleader for his friend and his partner, and you can really tell the camaraderie between these two guys, and it really shows through, which is very heartwarming and sweet. And I was really, really happy to talk to them. And hopefully I didn't fanboy out too much while discussing their career, because I am a huge, huge fan. In my life, not too much has gone by as Nova Scotia celebrates Heritage Day, which is a long weekend in February. The rest of the country calls it Family Day, but in my province we have Heritage Day, in which the day is kind of meant to be a way to celebrate different parts of Nova Scotian heritage. Today is a settlement in the valley, an Acadian heritage settlement, which is pretty cool. Then we get to celebrate that and have a day off from the normal drudgery of work. And I finished watching Boba Fett, not The Mandalorian, which I absolutely loved. People online were kind of vocal, and I think unfair to the show, saying it only got good when they brought The Mandalorian in, and that it was just The Mandalorian show with Boba Fett in it, but it was like an 8-episode show or 7-episode show, and 2 of them had kind of focused on The Mandalorian, so, that's still 5 focusing on Boba Fett, but I feel as though they're building a cohesive universe between the shows, and in doing so, may have not had a great mix of making that apparent, but the fans seem to glom on to the Mandalorian stuff being the better stuff. And I mean, obviously, you had 2 seasons of that show that you're really connected with, and this is them getting a new character. Well, not a new character, but a new version of the character off the ground. So it might not be as easy to connect with, all through the first season, especially when they dangle this other character you've known for quite a bit longer in front of you. But that being said, I really, really like the show. I think it's great. I'm super excited to see what they're going to do in the future. I love this sort of cohesive Star Wars universe they're building, and similar to the MCU. I also finished watching Peacemaker. My wife and I watched it eagerly every week when it came out, and I must say, James Gunn remains one of my favorite filmmakers, hands down. He makes films based on comic book things in a way that says, I am one of you. Like, I grew up reading this stuff. I know all these esoteric references. I want to put them in these programs, and I'm going to make it fun. I'm going to take something that could be ridiculous, like superhero films, and bring a raw humanity to it that really connects you to these characters. And, taking a character like Peacemaker, who's someone that's in DC history just a footnote, like barely a character, had some comics back in the day, but nothing that ever had achieved any real big success. To take this character and build a whole world around him in which you really, truly care about him, his troubles and his trials, his tribulations, and the friends that he surrounds himself with, it does an amazing job of bringing this sort of humanity to this character and making you truly care for it. It's wonderful. Anyway, enough about me. I'm really excited for you to listen to this conversation. This is my talk with Rand Bellavia and Adam English of Ookla the Mok.
Yeah, hopefully he will be here soon. I see you have a guitar behind you.
yes. Nowhere near the level of you guys, that's for sure. But it's just more.
Well, that's very sad because we're not. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think a lot of our abilities as singers and songwriters. I do not think a lot of our abilities as guitarers. So.
Even the term guitar, I'm not sure is correct, but I'll let it slide.
Well, yeah, singer, songwriter, guitar.
Yeah, well, I think
tromboner.
Oh, it looks like Adam is here. I'll admit him.
All right, very cool.
There we go.
How's it going? Oh,
good. How are you?
Good.
There he is. I like a man with a good mustache.
Well, thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me, guys. Is this your actual basement, or is that a background?
No, this is my actual basement, I'm afraid.
That is amazing.
Oh yeah, well, go Adam, talk. I mean,
so my basement is a mad scientist laboratory themed man cave.
This is amazing. My God. That is beautiful.
I have, this over here is my recording studio, and I have, I don't know how much of a
oh man, that is amazing. Holy crap.
Those are
Adam
guitars / swords and axes and so forth.
Various axes, of course.
That's my Frankenstein body parts in jars. And back here is a control panel, and over there is a bar and so forth.
My God,
do you have the fly thing with Insight? The pod?
Oh yeah.
From the fly, you have the pod, the transportation pod?
Yeah.
Oh no. Oh my God, that is amazing. Holy shit.
I have lights and stuff for that, but they aren't on because I wasn't.
And I want to make this clear. Adam made all this shit.
That's amazing.
Okay, Adam, this is all stuff that Adam did with his hands.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he's
like
crazy
movie
talented.
Quality stuff. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you have the devil's plaything?
Where's the? Yeah, do I? Oh, here it is. I can put it in the chat.
Oh man, that's beautiful. I'm a huge. I mean, obviously, people that gravitate towards nerddom are kind of broad along a lot of topics, but like old horror movies, old classic evil, some mad scientist dungeons. That's perfect. That's amazing. And you have a bar set up. That's so cool. You have my dream basement in your house right now, Adam. Living there.
Bar is over here. Whoa!
Oh, no.
And
I think you got his
that was
mic.
the last we saw of Adam.
This
What
is
happened?
his André. I think he hit his microphone.
Oh. Oh, that's funny.
Oh, dude.
That still works.
Yeah, you're good. We can hear you.
This is my recording microphone. That's seems to still function.
I think somebody might have checked on you. Your door opened upstairs there, so might make sure you're okay after the noise. Oh, thank you so much, guys, for being on. It's a real honor. I told a friend of mine who was a guest a couple weeks ago. He's an artist now for Marvel Comics, and he introduced me to you. God, probably 15, 20 years ago. How long have you guys been around for?
Oh, well,
Longer than that.
Okay,
yeah,
that makes sense.
I mean, our first official album came out, like the first real Ookla the Mok album came out in 97.
Mhm.
But Adam and I started writing songs together in 91, I think.
Yeah,
91 or 92. Yeah.
So-
Yeah, I guess it's probably like 92. Yeah.
So this is my first time interviewing two people at once, so I'll try to combine this in a way that works out with everybody.
Well,
Yes.
first you have to tell me what's the name of this artist that introduced you to.
Oh, his name is David Cutler. He
Okay.
he's currently he lives in Toronto or Toronto, and I live in Nova Scotia, and that's where I met him when he was going to university here, and I was in high school. And he draws for Marvel Comics right now. He did the rebringing back the character Thunderbird. You remember from X-Men, the one that died? Yeah. So they're reintroducing him back into the continuity back from the dead. And he designed the new costume and is doing the issue that's bringing him back to life.
Nice.
He also did some work on the Marvel Heritage Voices comic that just came out, which is sort of the indigenous superheroes. He did the story about American Eagle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he did the art on that, and he also designed the art for the Native American Captain America that they did in that storyline where they had the different Cat Americas. Yeah, he did that as well.
Yeah. Nice.
So I remember Aquaman is his favorite person ever. So the Arthur Curry song, I think I first heard through him, and I fell in love instantly, and I've been a massive fan ever since. So it's a real honor to be able to talk to you guys for sure.
Oh,
Oh
thanks.
yeah,
We're happy to be here.
We're an honor to be talked to for sure.
So okay, I'll start with Rand. Rand, where are you from originally?
I mean, generally speaking, I mean, the Buffalo area. I mean, I kind of grew up in an incredibly small town, kind of between Buffalo and Rochester.
Mm-hmm. And was comics the first love, or was it like, I guess this is for both of you. Adam, are you in the same area as well, since you guys knew each other?
Yeah, so I grew up in Batavia, right down the road, but Rand and I both moved to Buffalo right after college.
Oh, right on.
And have been here ever since.
So how long have you two known each other?
We met in the
Freshman year
fall
college.
of 1988
Wow. And how did you meet?
in college.
Oh, wow.
So I was in the dorm of the girls, the lobby of the girls' dorm,
Uh-huh.
and I sat down on the piano, pretentious guy that I was, and started playing "One for the Vine" by Genesis. And Rand, who was waiting for some other girl in the lobby, said, "That's One for the Vine." I'm impressed, and
Yeah.
we pretty much became best friends like that day.
Because like I definitely remember, like, I don't know, like if obviously I'm into popular music, but I'm also into music that is less popular. And like there's always, when you hear a song in public that like even before I identified it, I knew like I shouldn't be hearing this in public. You know what I mean? Like, this should only be heard on my stereo. And so I was like, what is that? And then I turned around and there's this guy and he's playing it, and so yeah.
That's amazing. So because like now it seems more popular in the mainstream to do weird, like, there's lots of bands that like Vitamin String Quartet and those sort of bands that are doing like, a cappella versions of famous songs or ones you wouldn't expect to hear with the string band. So it's a little more like, I'd say, in the public eye to do that. But I think being in a public space at that time and hearing that song being played on the piano in a girl's dormitory would certainly be surprising.
We sure are used to doing things musically that are a lot more popular now than they were when we were doing them.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, writing songs about Star Trek and superheroes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The culture is catching up to you finally.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think it's funny because you guys. So okay, well let's work our way through it. I guess. So when you met, were you guys both comic guys too? Obviously, comic sci-fi guys.
Yeah, I mean the way we always talk about like we're both into all that, but like I skew more comics. Adam probably skews more science fiction, but that's really splitting hairs. You started to ask, I definitely grew up. Like I kind of grew up in the middle of nowhere, so I had like subscriptions to specific comics to make sure, that was like every year for Christmas and my birthday, I would get a subscription to a comic. And, I definitely from a really, really early age, I love comics. And, and again, we were the perfect age to like Star Wars hit right when we were,
Yeah, I was 7, Rand was 8 when Star Wars came out.
Yeah, so just perfect,
That is the prime age, I would say. That's the best time to introduce it to any kid, I think, including nowadays thing. But amazing. So when you guys met up and started hanging out, was a band not far behind, or is it just something that sort of organically grew as time went on?
Well, yeah, we were both in bands when we met.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And we were both, if I dare say so, I think we were both certainly, we were egotistical enough to not be, we like, well, I really like you and I think you're talented, but I don't want to be in a band with you because then what am I for?
Exactly. Neither of us wanted to be the number 2 guy in our band.
Oh, that's true.
Neither one of us wanted to be John Oates.
I was literally just gonna say you had to argue over who would be Oates. Who's Garfunkel? Who's Garfunkel in this situation?
Yeah, I think, dude, you do have a better mustache. So
yeah, for sure.
But we, and then eventually, the weird thing is that it was actually after I graduated from college, I actually went to graduate school, and I was living in Ohio, and Adam was, still at the college we went to for his last year. And at that moment, like we both, at the same time, we both picked up the guitar, like, or we both kind of been singers, that wrote music and lyrics, but, we both kind of decided to pick up the guitar. And the other thing was we both started writing really silly, funny songs. Like before that, we had both been in like rock bands.
They would be giants around that time.
Yeah.
Which I was going to ask you about, because I assume they were an inspiration for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also being from Buffalo, we were, aware of Bare Naked Ladies and Moxie Frubus and bands like that, Corky and the Juice Pigs.
Canadian band.
We saw them, we were on the door at Moxie Frubus shows, because we like knew those guys way back. And, so that music that was coming down from Toronto, that kind of, was very influential on us too. And so, and again, a lot of those bands had multiple singers, multiple singers, multiple songwriters. And so, and the fact that, like the first time I think we met up when I visited home, after going to graduate school, like, we were kind of showing each other songs and just, we very naturally, I showed Adam a song and he just very naturally kind of added something to it. You know what I mean? And we kind of, and then the next day he showed me a fragment of a song and then I finished that. And then, we kind of just felt like, wow, this is really working. Literally, within a 24-hour period, we had written 2 songs together that we liked. And so we were like, okay, let's do this. And so we kept trying to find excuses to see each other. Like a lot of times we were like playing songs with the phone in our ear. You know what I mean? If we was a payphone, I didn't even have a phone. I was like,
time, Rand went off to grad school, and so he was in Ohio, and I was a year behind him. So I was still at college at Houghton College, where we attended, and and this was of course before cell phones. So we'd call each other, and I'd be out in the hallway on the hallway phone with the phone there and the guitars, and going over here to write. And,
what did you guys take in college?
We
both English lit.
Yeah, both studied English lit.
Oh, so perfect for a career in music.
Yeah.
Yeah. Either that or philosophy is what I would have guessed. That seems to be where most musicians come from.
And Adam, didn't you create a theater minor for yourself?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, I thought so, yeah.
There is a theater minor now at Houghton, but I was the first one that got a theater minor.
I can see the with the background there. I can see your interest in the things dramatic for sure.
Yes.
I'm actually doing I do acting as well, and I'm in a community theater group in my town, and I'm going to be directing a version of Frankenstein coming up. So your background is giving me a lot of inspiration.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's the Nick Deere one that Benedict Cumberbatch and Johnny Lee Miller did in England a few years ago. Yeah, it's like a very faithful adaptation of it, and it's really, really cool. So that's amazing.
Here's my Frankenstein question. Are you familiar with the Christopher Isherwood Frankenstein, the True Story from the 70s?
The movie? Yeah, I have it. I haven't watched it yet.
Ah, okay.
It's because I was reading an article that was like, I collect Blu-rays and stuff too, and a lot of ones from like Scream and Arrow and these boutique labels that put out so that one I did pick up because there was like a list of like the best Frankenstein versions, and that was on it. And I remember thinking, I've never heard of this before. And then I saw the Scream release on the shelf in Halifax, and I went and picked it up because I was like, I got to check it out. But I've actually been, it's funny you bring that up because Frankenstein's been well in my head because of planning out this play, which is going to be happening in October. So still ways off. But so I've been trying to immerse myself in different versions of it. Like I haven't seen the Kenneth Branagh one with,
oh, really? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
yeah. So that's on my list as well. So, because the inspiration of the design of the character of the monster is kind of where I'm going from that movie, because I really liked the way De Niro looked in it. So yeah. I have a special effects friend.
Yeah, there's a lot to like in that for sure. And that's definitely, a more faithful adaptation as well.
Yeah, which the play is. So so when you guys started, was it like comic book and sci-fi based right off the get-go?
Wait, I'm not done talking about Frankenstein yet.
Sorry, continue. I can talk about Frankenstein all day, Adam. Bring it back.
I've got notes for a play called Younger Brother of Frankenstein.
Okay, I want to read this.
The plot is that the Frankenstein monster is returning to the village of his birth, and he has stopped by a bar and relates the story of how he left that village, was chased out of the village many years ago by villagers with torches, but Dr. Frankenstein promised him that he'd never make another monster. And he is returning because he has heard that Frankenstein has created another, or is creating another monster. And so he gets to the village, but it turns out that Frankenstein has created a new monster, but this monster is super awesome and good looking and athletic and is a dentist for a living, so the original Frankenstein's monster begins to feel very, it's basically a story about the son from a first marriage coming and seeing how his father got it right the second time.
Is this based on experience, Adam, or
it's not?
Okay, no, it's a great idea, though. It's a great idea. That's fantastic.
It's funny. A friend of mine asked for some ideas, and I wrote down, just every idea, that half-baked idea that I can think of that I've had over the years. And like 9 of them are Frankenstein ideas.
Well, that makes some sense. I mean, looking at the decor here, I think it kind of fits.
I sure do love Frankenstein.
Oh yeah. Do you have the brown bag within arm's reach?
No, it would take some doing.
But
I have a Frankenstein costume.
Oh wow.
That I made. That it's okay. It's based on the Alan Ormond brown bag Frankenstein from his book Movie Monsters. That was a book. It was one of those Scholastic club books that that I got when I was a kid. That it's every other page is a description of a monster movie, and then how to make a costume of that.
Oh, cool. That sounds like something I would have gobbled up as a kid. I don't know.
I'm saying Adam and I had all the same monster books when we were kids. We found that out when we met each other. The books that we cherished the most from childhood, like we each had without, so
It's wonderful when you meet someone later in life that you connect with on so many levels like that. Like it's great. It's almost like like the lost brother that you always wanted but didn't have.
Later in life when we were 18.
It's so late.
Yeah. Hey, I was 19, man.
Yeah, that's right. He was way farther. He's seen stuff at that point.
Well, it's funny because Rand was the most popular guy at our college, and
you weren't for playing
high
the
school, I did
Genesis
not consider myself to be popular, and so us becoming friends, and we actually roomed together my second semester freshman year.
Mm-hmm.
So it was super neat to make friends with the most popular guy at the school.
Well, that's being super into comics and nerdy stuff in the 80s. That doesn't seem like a recipe for being the cool guy in school.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I guess my code switching was on point. And obviously I didn't have that terminology, but I like really love talking about comic books, but I could talk about sports too.
Yeah.
And I could kind of meet people where they were.
Yeah, I still can't talk about sports.
Any day now, Adam. Any day.
Well, whenever anyone talks about sports, Adam just starts talking about Quidditch until they change the subject. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That sounds about right.
But yeah, we met. I mean, what was you had started to ask a question.
Was the music because you mentioned inspiration being They Might Be Giants and stuff, and even their music, which kind of bends towards the nerdy, doesn't go deep into like talking about comics or sci-fi.
Yeah, our early stuff, like our first, we put in 1993, we put out a cassette of 16 songs, and those songs have a lot of nerdy references. You know what I mean? We'll reference Wolverine, or we'll reference Star Trek, or we'll reference, but there weren't any songs where we're this song, I'm the voice of Riker, and this song, Adam's the voice of, Aquaman.
The Wolf
we
Man.
We weren't doing that until what really happened was, we started out, we wrote all these songs, and then we were, we did what we thought you're supposed to do, which is we went out to bars and played our songs. And it turns out people in Buffalo don't so much, or at least in 1990, didn't so much want to hear our funny songs about, Star Wars and superheroes. And so, we were like, well, I guess this isn't really going to happen for us. We were kind of, but then a mutual friend of ours was like, have you thought about, playing your songs at a science fiction convention, and I was like, we didn't know that was a thing. And so, and this is, again, at this point I was living in Dayton, Ohio, and there was a big con called Marcon in Columbus, Ohio. And, these friends of ours took me to this con, and I played a couple of our songs, just like an open circle, a couple of the songs that Adam and I had written, and the response was really, really positive. So like the next day I called Adam and I'm like, hey, we got to get ourselves to a science fiction convention. We got to become part of this FILK community, which is FILK is what they call it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started attending these conventions, then we started getting invited to perform and do concerts. And then once we knew we had an audience, then it was like, oh, we're writing songs about Aquaman. Once we knew there was, that people cared. And that's something we learned right away, was that no matter how deep our references got, there was one song on that tape we made that we really just wrote for our friend Dave Lennon, because we thought it would amuse him. And the song is called Stranger in the Mirror. And it's essentially like a weird song, the voice of the song is John Constantine.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's all sorts of references to the early Alan Moore Swamp Things and Hellblazer, but there's also references to 1,000 other insane things that have nothing to do with him.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just throwing whatever against the wall to see what would stick. But then, once we kind of found an audience, we found that there were fans that they got every reference.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just encouraged Adam and I both to okay, well, if they're going to get it, we got to go deeper. We got to, because we were kind of holding back for fear of, we were already kind of other, we
well, I've had
we noticed when we went to FILKs that we'd perform a song, and if we dropped a lyric, we had people coming up to us afterwards and saying, now, after that one lyric, what was that one thing you were trying to say?
Wow, they're paying attention.
The FILK community really cares about the lyrics and the text, if I can make the distinction. In other words, they want the lyrics to be clever, they want the lyrics to be smart, but they also want the songs to be about something. You know, like certainly in, you know, kind of post-grunge, you know, or even like mid-grunge 90s music, like, you know, it was really cool to have songs about nothing.
Yeah.
You know, and when Adam used, you know, I remember Adam saying this a lot, which, you know, that was cool, is he'd be like, well, if people will listen to a song about nothing, they'll listen to a song about something. So it's like, you know, if you don't like our song about Star Trek, just don't listen to the words, you know, and that's, you know, it was always important to us to have the melody and the music be good enough that you could enjoy it even if you don't speak English.
Well, that's fair. Like your comment on going deeper into the references, because I had this talk with someone recently. I think I might have done it on here, but how like even back in like the late 90s, early 90s, late 80s, if you saw a guy wearing a Superman t-shirt, you'd be like, oh, that's a nerd, you know? Now, you know, teenagers wear them. They're at, you know, Walmart on the rack. Like you can't, the only way you can tell someone's really into the culture is how obscure the t-shirt is. If the more obscure it gets, the further down the rabbit hole, you know, and the cooler they are. If it's like a random bar from Watchmen or something in the background, you're like, okay, that guy knows what's up, you know? But
it's funny you say that, because for a while when we started performing in Buffalo, you know, we pretty much would play the opening of an envelope, you know, like anywhere where we could play would be great. And, but, you know, we did a lot of kind of open mics and whatnot. And when we would do these open mics, we would just, you know, I would just sign ourselves up with like absurd names. And part of it was just to see if it would amuse Adam, you know, and then Adam, of course, started contributing. And so we performed, but like at one point, and also I just wanted to hear the guy coming up next, Bubastis, the genetically altered lynx. You know what I mean? Like you know,
was that your name?
The surfing colonel from Apocalypse Now. Those are the band names
each of those names.
What was that?
We performed under each of those names.
Those are amazing. Well, I was going to get to when you guys settle on Ookla the Mok specifically, because that's a pretty obscure reference.
We didn't settle on it as much as that's the name we were playing on when people were like, when we were at a FILK convention and people were like, these guys are awesome. Let's invite them back to play. What are you called? And that night we were called Ookla the Mok. So
yeah, like we had talked about Ookla the Mok because, like, you know, like we each kind of had a rule. Like Adam's rule was, and again, not that we didn't agree with these rules, but like, you know, Adam had expressed, you know, like he wanted it to be a nerd culture reference that was deep enough that anyone that, if you heard it and knew it immediately, you'd say, I got to hear this band. You know what I mean? And, you know, so that's why he liked Ookla the Mok. And I kind of liked it because I wanted something that just sounded interesting, even if you didn't know what it meant, you know? And again, I have to admit, you know, there were a lot of bands out there with similar sorts of names.
Goddamn Mata Hoopel or whatever.
Mata Hoopel.
Well, no, but the thing though that like if we knew that the internet was coming, we would have picked a name that you could spell. You know, like that's like, you know, I always say like the only band I feel worse for than us is the because they're ungoogleable. Like you can't find them online. You know what I mean? How do you Google the? You know, like,
that's an amazing point.
But Ookla the Mok, you know, people, you know, like for the longest time, like it was just, you know, it was only our website is ooklathamok.com, but you know, they're not gonna be able to spell that. You know what I mean? They don't see it.
Yeah. It's always great when you have to explain it. All right, look us up at ooklathamok.com. It's 2 O's, K. Don't miss the MOK. No, that's amazing. Well, I mean, especially picking something like, I'm still kind of floored by how deep your guys' history goes as far as when you started, because like to be in the music industry singing songs about that, even at the time period you were, because this is before, you know, the big renaissance into geek culture being mainstream. 100%. Like way before, like, you know,
we were already old by the time that happened.
Even Arthur Curry is a reference in the mainstream that at that point wouldn't be something that most people would know, right?
And it's one of the reasons why, like, you know, one of the things that really, like, obviously, like the FILK community was the first community that really kind of embraced
it. Must have been very good to finally find
let us know we had this audience.
Yeah.
But then when we started playing at comic book conventions, you know, what we found was that, like, you know, there was this whole group of, you know, up and coming comic creators that just embraced us because, there was just nothing else like us. You know, like, you know, we used to, I mean, you know, I I would say odds are 50-50 that he would even remember us, but we used to hang out with Brian Michael Bendis, back when he was doing the calendar books, and that's how we got to be friends with now we're good friends with Art Baltazar. And obviously his career is taken right off, but he's done covers for us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because we knew him in the 90s, when we were, when we used to go to these cons, they'd give us a table and we'd be set up to sell our stuff during the weekend, and we'd be hanging out with these comic guys, and they were like, what do you do? And we're like, we write songs about superheroes, and they're like, no way, you could do that.
At that point, it's even hard to make a career writing about superheroes, so it's amazing.
Right.
You can do music too.
Writing
it's funny.
comic books about superheroes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, specifically. Yeah, exactly.
And we ended up, for a long time, we used to go to we were at the Pittsburgh Comic Con every year. That was a con that we went to, and they always would put us with the media guest, which always cracked me up. They didn't know, most cons would put us, kind of in with all the comics guests.
Yeah.
But the Pittsburgh would always put us with the media guests, which meant that we
were next
collected
to Ellis Creed from the Star Trek movies.
Yeah, and then we pretty much collected most of the Star Wars cast. We've had a table next to Kenny Baker. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And we hung out with
Anthony Daniels introduced us at
that was at a Wizard World. Yeah.
Oh man,
And,
that would have been amazing.
Yeah, and just Jeremy Bullock, and all the what I mean, all of.
I got to meet him. I was very happy at a con in I think it was Montreal, and there's nobody in line to see him, and I was wearing a Boba Fett hoodie, and I just walked up, and he's like, "This is really nice. Where'd you get this from?" And he's looking at it, and I'm like, really cool. Man, he was just super cool. It's nice when you get to I've done some indie comics. And I sell art and stuff at cons, so I've been, rubbing elbows with a few of those types. And it's always nice when you get to know them and know they're cool people. And that's, what I mean? Absolutely.
And, so we, kind of, and again, it's, I always crack Adam and I up when these cons would, what I mean, treat us like we were celebrities just because they didn't know what to do with musicians that did nerd music, but it's certainly, like I said, it was interesting to be doing that alone, and now we've kind of, uncomfortably slid into this elder statesman role with these younger bands that are way more successful, you know what I mean? Kind of, talk about us, in this way, which is, it's nice, but,
But even that, I don't feel, even with younger bands doing the sort of with the stick you guys began with, I don't feel like there's still an overabundance of that type of, specifically towards catering towards nerd culture. I mean, I know there's a guy from here that's a rapper named Word Burglar that I had on the show not too long ago that does that as well. And he raps stuff about comic books and old 80s cartoons and stuff like that. But and he's achieved a good level of success, I think. But yeah, I couldn't count 5 or 10 bands I could think of that do, what you guys do. So I think it's still, it's still kind of a niche market.
When we started doing it, there were zero
bands. Yeah. Well, you guys are innovators.
The rock band thing too. I mean, I think, like you said, there's a lot of, nerdcore hip hop and a lot of, and
way more of that
is because of the way, that's obviously a super popular form of music. I dare say more so than rock at this point. But I think it's also because it travels well. Getting a rock band to a convention takes a lot of effort and money, and whereas if you're just one dude with a microphone and a recording that you can rap to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a lot easier. But I remember Adam, what was that? Where was that? We were at a con and we were setting up all of our gear. And I think it was Devo Spice. Tom Rockwell was like, you want to say it?
Yeah, Tom Rockwell came up and said, "Wow, real instruments, how 20th century." And we oh, really?
I'm pretty old. But I think that there's something exciting about seeing a band live, and all the music that they're hearing is being produced by the people that you're seeing.
Yeah.
There's just something.
And to know that they're your people, your tribe, I guess, in a way, to listen to bands that speak to you, so many bands speak to you on some emotional level about, whatever trauma we all share as being human beings. But to actually have someone that's singing about Mr. Potato Head or about Arthur Curry or about all these things that are deep. I remember as a kid, when I was a teenager, probably listening to music. And I think it was Yeah, the Mr. Potato Head one. Like even looking up who Hugo was because I didn't know. So like I was like, and then I learned the whole history of this sort of side thing to Mr. Potato Head, this Hugo Man of 1,000 Faces thing, and you know,
was the competitor.
I know, yeah, but it was like,
I had the Hugo, and
So
that's
did
why, like, you know, I remember like I written that and I showed it, you know, that section, I showed that to Adam, and you know, he was like, you know, I mean, you know, a little concerned, you know, that it was, you know, and I remember like we kind of put a pin in it. We weren't sure we wanted to, you know, because we thought, well, we don't want to go too deep. And then I remember like I saw like Michael Stipe was appearing on some show on MTV or whatever. And, you know, the VJ introduced themselves. I'm, you know, vacuous VJ who's going to be replaced when I turn 23. And then Michael Stipe grabbed the microphone and said, and I'm Hugo, man of 1,000 faces. Because at that moment, he was rocking the shaved head and the little, you know, and you know, the Van Dyke or whatever, or not the Van Dyke, just the, you know, the goatee and you know, the chin beard, which is the way Hugo was imaged on the box. And I thought, man, if Michael Stipe feels that he can reference that on MTV, then Ookla could certainly reference it on their song that, you know.
100%. And like, just like deep references, all these stuff in Aquaman, like the Super Scroll, all that stuff. Like just, it's speaking to like, especially as a kid my age, like I went to a small school in a small community here in Nova Scotia. Like Nova Scotia is not a big province in Canada. It's kind of the way. So, you know, I didn't have a great group of friends to talk about comic books with. So even as a teenager and even later on when I met Dave and he introduced me to music, to listen to, you know, really fun rock music that, you know, speaks to you on a level that no other music has in your experience. It really opens stuff for a teenager. So I think it was a really cool, like for me, it was very formative.
Oh, worthwhile.
That's right. Well,
no, like one of the coolest things. I mean, when we put out, it's funny because when we put out the 10-year anniversary edition of Less Than Art, which came out in 1997, which makes this year the 25th anniversary year of that album. But when we put out the 10-year anniversary, which I swear we just did last year, you know, when we put that out, I don't know if you're familiar with the name, but Shannon McGuire wrote a review of it and talked about how important that record was to her growing up. And I remember that was really meaningful to me because she's someone that we knew, you know, she was like a teenager, you know, when that came out, and she's now, you know, she's a huge big deal, you know. I mean, she's like, I mean, comics fans would know her as, you know, she's been writing, she wrote the Ghost Spider comic. Oh, right.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
But she's also like, you know, she's like set records for like the most Hugo nominations in a year. And I mean, she's, you know, both under her name, Shauna McGuire and Mira Grant, you know, she's written a ton of stuff. And it was, you know, so yeah, it is meaningful when you hear, you know what I mean, from people that, you know, because again, you know, you don't, especially with the internet and the way things spread, you know, like you don't always hear, you know, we're not on tour, so we're not necessarily, you know, hearing the effect that the music's having on people. So it's great to hear that.
Oh, dude, absolutely. And I mean, the last album too, which you guys, I mean, I spoke with you to organize this interview. I mentioned that I was one of the backers of your Kickstarter for the vinyl release because I'm a big vinyl collector, and I was always excited to have a vinyl copy of some of your music, which I could never ever find in the wild. So, and I love that album. I've been listening to all your music again to kind of prep up for the talk. And I was talking to someone the other day about my perfect version of Lex Luthor and how I don't think they've nailed it yet in a movie. I assume you guys are familiar with Grant Morrison's run on All-Star Superman.
That was very influential.
So that version of Lex Luthor to me was the definitive film version of Lex Luthor I want to see and haven't seen. And your song Suprema Lex is like, this is perfect. Like this sums up what I want this character to be to a T that I have yet to get. I mean, the Superman animated show did it. That was perfect. But I want to see it live action, and I don't know if I'm ever going to get it. But I really love this version of Lex that, you know, is the perfect human specimen. Like has achieved everything human could hope to achieve. Physically fit, like the most physically fit, the richest, the smartest, can do anything. But he's overshadowed because of this guy.
Invented a jetpack.
Exactly. But it doesn't matter because that guy can fly without it, and that's who people love. And it's just all built from jealousy, and it works out so well when you really lean hard into it. And that song summed it up to me to a T. And I remember listening to the gym the other day, and I was like, "This is it." I said, "This is the perfect representation of what Lex Luthor should be." So,
well, we're very happy with that song in particular, and with that album in general. 2 years ago I had a stroke and I can't play guitar or piano anymore.
No.
Which really sucks. But having put that album out makes me feel as though, well, if I never am able to contribute anything more, that album, I'm very happy with that contribution.
Yeah, I can absolutely see why.
Yeah, we're really happy with the way that came out.
I mean, I guess every artist assumes that their next work is their greatest, but would you guys put that one up as far as your favorite is from your output?
Mine, but probably not Rant's.
No?
Yeah, I mean it's certainly up there. I mean, I like I said, it's either that or Ookla, which I know are not the popular choices. You know what I mean?
No, there's a lot of great music. I mean, all of yours. I'm the biased. I'm a biased judge, but I like that album a lot too because it really speaks well to the hollowness of Hollywood and the sort of all that sort of stuff.
And I think about this a lot, like because what I want to say, like. I think look at like a band like They Might Be Giants. Look at their career. Like, obviously when you listen to their more recent stuff, it sounds so much better than the early stuff. But, but if you ask me as a fan, like, of course, well, Lincoln's my favorite. You know what I mean? Like, what I mean? Because as a fan, I don't care about, the intricacies of the arrangement or the, you know what I mean? It's just, how did that hit me in the face when I first heard it?
Yeah.
And so like, I totally, that's why, like when we say, of course we really like Versus Evil, or, we're not bad mouthing the other stuff. It's just that, I feel like Versus Evil, I think of all our albums is the one that like, the way we wanted it to sound, like we knew if we were going to lean into the villain thing, we had to lean into the kind of the harder rock, some of the metal thing. Mm-hmm. And I feel like those songs, sound the closest to what Adam and I heard in our head when we conceived them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that does that sound fair, Adam? Or
definitely. I feel like our first studio album, Less Than Art. I don't feel like that sounds like Ookla the Mok. Mm-hmm. Now, our second album, which we put out only 1 year later, Super Secret, I feel like does sound like Ookla the Mok. Mm-hmm. But I really feel like, and when we put out KLA, we were really going for a very pop kind of a sound. And when we put out Versus Evil, we were really going for more of a metal sound.
Was it the sound you guys are going for, or was it also tone and theme as well? Because I noticed with Super Secret, you guys went super hard OKLA seemed to be less songs centered around like specifically comics and stuff, but more about celebrity and some of that sort of stuff.
And the thing is, when Adam and I sit down to write, we rarely sit down with a theme in mind. Like we don't, it's not like we said, let's make an album about this. It's just, we start writing and then we notice, okay, we're working on 15
like,
songs.
Oh my God, 27 songs about monkeys.
Yeah, like exactly. It's like, well, we've got 15 songs and 8 of them are about monkeys. Let's get rid of those other 7 and let's work on this and then see what happens. And so these themes kind of develop organically as we write. But yeah, I mean, like Less Than Art, most people would say is not themed, but I mean, I think it has a clear homecoming theme. There's like 5 or 6 songs on that album that use the word home in the lyric.
That say "I'm coming home."
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like they're, so it's and that's, but that's not something we set out to do, but there it is. And I think it's just what happens when you create. Again, you mentioned Grant Morrison, just like JLA and the Invisibles are written at the same time, and they couldn't be more different, but the themes are almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
Because he wrote them at the same time.
But even his output currently is still like, even Multiversity is still similar themes, something dark behind reality that's shaping everything,
Right. But yeah, it's funny. Adam mentioned when he mentioned our sound on Super Secret and it being kind of the Ookla sound. I remember there was a less than positive review of Super Secret when it came out that referred to us as sounding like REM humping bare naked ladies. And I'm like, yeah, that's not that far off from this,
Well,
in terms of what we were listening to,
Yeah.
and in terms of of what that album sounds like. It's really jangly,
Yeah.
like the early REM. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
obviously,
As a huge fan of
melodically-
both, I could understand that for sure. But
Yeah,
that's
so,
an
I think
interesting
that-
interesting point. Was the like how did the mainstream sort of critics take your guys' music at that time period? Because like when I found no, you didn't make it that far. Critics in general, because like it feels like it's so different thematically than anything that they would have been familiar. I guess folk rock music, it would fit in there if you just listen to it on that level. But if it's like, with the themes taken into context, I feel like the mainstream would have known what to do with you.
Yeah, and you're right. It's funny. Earlier I mentioned, Adam saying, him saying, around that time that, if people will listen to songs about nothing, they'll listen to songs about anything.
Mm-hmm.
And what we found out was that apparently that's not true. I mean, it makes sense, but it's not true because, someone, actually it was, it doesn't matter who it was. Someone was listening to our stuff who had never heard it before. And the comment that they made was, you guys write songs that demand that people listen to them. And they weren't necessarily saying that as a good or a bad thing, but they were just saying it kind of, and I think that's true that, it's, the songs are really dense musically and melodically and lyrically. And so because of that, yeah, it's something that, the only song we ever had that got like serious, like radio play, and by saying serious, I don't mean a lot, but I mean, it got a decent amount of local radio play, certainly in Western New York, is Tandem Bike. Because it's just like it's a relationship song. It's a fairly simple arrangement.
Tandem Bike, Adam.
Oh, Tandem Bike.
Yeah. Because remember Mike Ryan, there was a DJ, at one of the main stations in Buffalo who liked us, and he had us on a show, he interviewed us several times, but he used to play Tandem Bike all the time. And I remember, we were like, why did you pick that as the single or whatever? And it was what you're saying. It was like, well, it's, anyone can understand and enjoy this song. It doesn't require, it doesn't have the density, and it doesn't have the lyrical, again, it's not really the foot we would have wanted to put forward, of course.
Well, it's funny because that's one of the ones I was listening to today. Like I was going through some of your stuff at work while I was getting ready, and that one, and oh man, I'm blanking on the name right now. The one about like the friend that's stopping by with his friends from Peru, and he's
my brother's trapper keeper.
My brother's trapper keeper. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. And I love, like, I don't know, like it's the progression of the song, I guess, like how the every part of that song hits every part of my brain in the perfect way. I just like it's and it's definitely something relatable. Like everyone's had that friend that's popped by and been a horrible nuisance. Maybe not to the level that one was, but the line about taking a slug in the spine is probably one of my favorite. It's probably one of my favorite out there lyrics. It just comes out of nowhere.
The last time I listened to that song, all I could think about was like, oh, I miss those sweet, sweet young lungs. They can like sing for, whatever, 50 seconds without breathing.
That's right. No, it was amazing output, man. You guys, have a storied career that's amongst nerddom, to me anyway, is up there. So, and you guys have a new one coming out too, right? Which is live album, or is that out now?
The live album's out. It's actually a double live album, like in the spirit of the 70s double live albums that were,
Oh yeah, of course. Of course, even the live album would be a throwback to something from that time.
Yes,
of course.
And yeah, like the reason that even happened, we really didn't. It's not like we set out to record and release a live album, but what happened was a few years back, Con in Chicago contacted us and said, "What would it take?" They're like, "We want to book Ookla as our music guest of honor." And we're like, "Great, that's awesome." And they said, "No, we want to book the band that recorded Less Than Art. What would it take to do that?" And at this point, our drummer Luis lives in Pacific Northwest. Our bass player Mike lives in LA, and we're like, well, it would take 4 plane tickets and 4 hotel rooms, is what you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And whatever, and we didn't have a lot of time to rehearse. We all showed up on Thursday, and then on Friday we did I think we did like a 90-minute to 2-hour set on Friday night, and then we did an entirely unique 90-minute to 2-hour set on Saturday.
Oh wow!
So that we ended up having recorded like 3.5 hours of songs so that we could pick, what we'd want to release, because we thought, just the four of us just don't get to play together anymore. So we thought it was kind of historical in that sense. And God bless Mike and Luis, because they were playing songs that they'd never, recorded. Like these were a lot, we haven't, Luis, the last album Luis played on was Super Secret. So he was having to so he had to and obviously we did a lot of songs from Less Than Art and Super Secret. But we also did songs from our other albums, and he was he was hanging right in there, and that was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's amazing.
So it's definitely a very kind of garage band sounding. Like I said, we're we certainly don't sound tight at all, because we weren't, because it's not like we've been performing together or touring or whatever. But it's a fun. It definitely we were pretty adamant about not wanting to not to do any re-recording, or not to do to kind of keep it pure. Like, this is what you would have heard. But we also it's fun, because it's kind of like it's a nice greatest hits set. You're hearing
awesome.
2 hours of our favorite songs. So.
That's awesome. And one thing I was going to ask you guys about too was, so like Versus Evil was 2013, and even I know at the time, I remember when it came out, because when I spoke with you first, Rand, I messaged you on Facebook, asked if I could use one of your music for the theme song for a different podcast I was doing, where we were just talking about comic things, me and some friends. And I remember when that album was coming out, I announced, I said, "Oh, like the people do our theme song have a new album coming out, Versus Evil, check it out." And when I said it's Ookla the Mok versus Evil, one of my my friends, like one of the co-people on the podcast, said, "Well, I hope they win." That's what he said. But I remember, like, even at that time period, because I mean, you guys are singing about comic book villains essentially, and villains from you have a medley of villains from all different genres. Which is awesome. I love that song. But the like, even with comics specifically, you guys seem to sing mostly about like the more innocent age of comics, I guess, when villains were like twirling mustaches, and like it seems like you stuck away from some of the newer, super dark, like angsty type of comics. Is that like because you really enjoy that time period of comics?
Well, that Versus Evil for a fairly extended period of time when we were writing it, it was supposed to be a concept album about the villains from the Marvel Comics Secret Wars.
Okay, that makes sense.
Comics. So we had we were gonna do an album with a song about each of those characters.
Okay,
and then. But we had, the other side was a Darth Vader and the Emperor kind of song, and we had Mwahaha that had it was kind of across the genres, and we were like, let's open it up. Then we had a terrible song about Marsha and Skeeter, their Titania, and who was the other one?
Oh, we had more than one terrible. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, there were a lot that were just like, some of the songs, like the Amora song, really developed nicely. You know what I mean? And Dr. Octopus, there's certain ones that were like, wow, these are coming along great. Then there were other ones that we just weren't as excited about, and we're like, well, why are we limiting ourselves to this really weird? No one else cares about the parameters that we've set up, so let's tear down the walls. And that opened up the door to Bizarro World, and and of course Suprema Lex, and all sorts of songs that But if you think about it, like Kang the Conqueror, the Wrecking Crew, the Lizard, these are all characters that were in the Marvel Superhero Secret Wars.
Doom, Dr. Octopus.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah. And even Venom, kind of slides in from the symbiote from Battle World, which you guys
right, exactly. Yeah. And and that's why it definitely, I thought you were going to ask this. A lot of, it does skew a little more Marvel than DC, and the reason is because of what Adam was saying. But I do think that, first, one of the reasons that we, a big, going back to like Less Than Art, certainly nostalgia is a big part of, the emotional, component of what we write about. And a lot of it's about, this idea of kind of how can you be childlike without being childish and all that. I put away childish things, in Mylar bags with acid-free backing boards. You know what I mean? But at the same time, so I mean, and it's just that, we write about that period because that's what we grew up reading.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I will also say that, I certainly when I was in high school, which was, when, Dark Knight and Watchmen, were coming out, I certainly ate that stuff up. I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
But as I got older, I realized it's like what I loved was the craft that they were bringing to it,
mm-hmm.
And the quality of it. But the actual content, the older I got, the less, it's, like Grant Morrison says at the end of his Animal Man run, God help us if being adult means, sex and violence, you know what I mean? Or, if that's, it's, and I think, to this day, I mean, Grant Morrison is, he's always talking about how I don't know if you're following his Xanadu or Xanadu.
That's not out yet, no, right? It's coming.
Well, he's releasing it through his, why can't I think of the word right now?
Yeah, I haven't got into it yet. I'm a massive fan of Grant Morrison. If I had to pick a favorite comic guy,
he's releasing annotations about the Superman and the Authority series that he recently wrote,
which I enjoyed.
And one of the things he talks about is how, I guess, when it was pitched to him, the idea was, what if Superman aged in real time, and by the time you get to the 90s, he's an old man and he's kind of become a fascist. And Grant Morrison is like, screw you, that's the opposite of what I want to do. Why poison this beautiful story? The point of Superman, isn't that he can be corrupted. It's that, we don't need to imagine a powerful person could be corrupted. We need to imagine that a powerful person is incorruptible.
Yeah, that's beautifully said and 100% correct. Because I remember reading an interview with him recently where he was talking about the Injustice games and how they're all based around the idea that Superman gets killed by Lois Lane, gets killed by the Joker, and then Superman just loses it and becomes a tyrant essentially. And he says, no way would Superman, nothing would happen that would make him become, a monster. Yeah. He needs to be a paragon of virtue. And I totally agree. And I've talked about this before, but that, there are dark characters that are meant to be dark characters. I don't want to see the Punisher, wearing a red costume and getting a kitten out of a tree. But I do feel like we need and mostly it translates to film and depictions in film and television, like the Superman movies and whatever. It's just because Batman is a cool character that people like because it's dark doesn't mean Superman needs to be dark too. And I feel like they need, you don't need to paint it all with a Batman brush. Let's have a bright, colorful, hopeful Superman. And as much as people hated the Justice League, Joss Whedon's Justice League, I actually was I finally got a version of Superman I kind of like, a friendly, colorful, bright, joking, nice Superman, not this broody, I guess I have to snap this guy's neck Superman that just, I remember watching Man of Steel, and when he's sitting there with his dad and he goes, should I just let that whole busload of kids die to protect my secret? And his dad's like, oh, maybe. And I was like, wow, I don't think I'm going to like where this movie's going. So I just think thematically, there's some characters like Marvel's done it well with Captain America, that could be a good, hopeful character that doesn't need to be corrupted and turned into something evil just to be for shock value.
Yeah,
Zack Snyder, as Rand has pointed out, he clearly doesn't like Superman as he's always been written.
Yeah.
He wants to turn Superman into some other kind of character that it's not interesting to him unless Superman gets so angry he beats somebody to death.
Yeah. Or Batman's gunning people down in the streets and whatever.
Yeah, there's so many analogs. Like Mark Waid did that Irredeemable comic several years back, which is obviously he's taking his Superman analog and he's writing the story, what if Superman, and that's fine. You could, but you don't have to do it to Superman.
No.
You know what I mean?
In fact, there's more, I think, creative outlets to explore by putting him in situations where he manages to come out by being a good person instead of having that whole storyline, the original Authority storyline or the Elite, Superman versus the Elite. That was whole set up, but it's what if the Superman we know, the golden happy Superman, meets the dark, brutal heroes of today, and what does that look like? And we got a great story where he shows them that if he were to be like them, it would be terrifying. And and that's not what he's about. And even a small glimpse of that should be so horrific that people don't want to see it. Like, I'm okay with Brightburn or those sort of things that take the idea and go into a horror world with it, but that's something different. You're right, it's an analog. It's not doing it to the character itself.
Yeah, if you
And in
want
fact-
to tell a story like that, you use a pastiche of Superman.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, and maybe even more importantly, like those stories only work because of your knowledge of how good Superman is. You know,
Yes,
like
exactly.
those stories aren't interesting if Superman is corruptible.
Yeah,
You're
you're right.
only interesting because they're a thought experiment.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, we know that Superman that could never do this.
Yeah.
So which is again why, like, Injustice. Again, that I haven't played the game, or
Yeah,
but
me
I mean,
neither.
it might be. Again, the problem isn't the story. The problem is, why did they have to do it with Superman?
Yeah.
And of course, because there's more money in doing it with Superman.
Yeah, and just
You
there's
know,
this need for everything to be dark, and I get it. I like dark stories. I'm a huge fan of lots of different genres and different things, but there's some things that don't need to be, and I just feel like it doesn't all need to be painted with this cool dark brush.
Yeah, I mean, something I've been, Adam is sick and tired of hearing me say for the last 40 years is that, Alan Moore is all about, finding the darkness within the light.
Mhm.
We're going to dig into the superhero and find out what really makes them tick and find the horror in the darkness. Grant Morrison is about finding the light in the darkness.
Mhm.
He's about traveling in the dirt and finding that little bit of hope.
Mhm.
It's his stories. The Alan Moore stories start out with your typical superhero story and they descend into horror and madness. Grant Morrison stories tend to start with horror and madness. And then by the end, there's that upward turn. And that's why, I prefer, like, Alan Moore is clearly a more gifted writer,
Mhm.
but I prefer Grant Morrison's stories.
I agree. I totally agree. And it's funny that the two of them don't get along in real life because they are like polar opposites, it seems.
Well, I mean, it's
as what thematically when they write, but you're 100% right on that. And because I remember even when, like, I've read everything Morrison has put out, and I'm a massive fan of The Filth, which is a book that doesn't get a lot of attention of his, which is a totally weird
flowers, Ned.
Really, yeah, exactly. Really messed up.
I was thinking of it while I was talking. That to me, that's the moment. The spread it on your flower. It's
that even the shit of the world has a point and a purpose, and it's not necessarily a dark thing, and you can, it's just at its core, it's an uplifting story. And you're right, most of his stories do end that way.
Yeah, and it's the filth. I mean, it's like if you were to describe that to someone, they'd be like, that is horror. It's and that's the perfect example of the comic. It starts out so horrifying, and it's called The Filth, and it's about pornography and like not just pornography, but like the depths of the
darkness within people, and it kind of covers everything, even like physical, like cancer and like,
it's like everything, the worst
away.
of everything.
Yeah,
and it's ultimately about how we can carve meaning out of
out of horribleness, and I think that's why I've always resonated with him, and I love Alan Moore as well. But I think it's why I've always resonated.
He's so talented.
Yeah.
And it even, I mean, it's I do a column for majorspoilers.com. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And and I've written quite a bit about like the kind of the anxiety of influence that Grant Morrison experiences with Alan Moore, and even down to the fact that you see it in I don't know, what was the first Seven Soldiers comic, the Manhattan Guardian, is that what it's called? Yeah, I think. And
yes,
because there's that like kind of the underground subway pirates. And the two all pirates that are fighting for control of the underground.
Yeah,
one
right.
Is all beard and one is no beard.
Right.
Gee, I wonder what this is a metaphor about. You know what I mean?
Well, it's funny because there's a book. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's called Super Folks. That came out like in the 80s.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So there are a lot of things in that book that are very reminiscent of things that happened in Alan Moore comics. And this is way before that came out. And like Grant Morrison, when they re-released it, Grant Morrison did the introduction, and he draws so much attention to it. He's like so much. He's like, look at all this stuff that Alan Moore did too from this book.
Two books that really inform Watchmen are that and The Sirens of Titan by Kurt Vonnegut. I've actually been doing. It's funny that comes up because I've just been doing a deep dive in Vonnegut stuff. Because in Sirens of Titan, the climax is a fake alien invasion that unites the world in peace.
Well, and that was even from the Outer Limits as well. They did an episode that did the same thing where the government, I think, for the old black, or was it Twilight Zone? No, it was the Outer Limits. Was it the Fearful Symmetry? Where the episode was called?
It was the some things of Archon.
Yes. That's it.
Nice.
Yeah, and because it was the whole thing was the same idea that they fake an alien invasion to unite, and I think it was Cold War stuff too. So it was very similar in theme. But yeah, I mean, like, I guess nobody writes on an island, right? I mean, you're always, whatever your environment is influences what you're going to write about.
Yeah,
and perhaps whether it was conscious or not, but Superfolk specifically has, like, there's the character that has an evil Shazam alternate that he can't let come out, that's right out of Miracle Man. There's the imp from the other dimension that chooses to be evil and attack the hero that never was like that before, which is right out of the Man of Tomorrow. Whatever happened to the Man from Tomorrow. Like, there's so many things like that in it.
My all-time favorite comic book.
Yeah, my theory, Adam, I might not have shared this with you. My theory that
hot take.
Because Pitlick in that story is a stand-in for Yahweh.
Why?
Because he was like the idea that I'm going to be like I'm going to be vengeful for 2,000 years, and then I'm going to be a trickster for 2,000 years, and then I'm going to be, but like it's 2,000 years. Like he totally changes his attitude toward interacting with other people every 2,000 years.
That's very interesting.
And this idea that what I mean, that's like always like, I'm going to become Jesus for 2,000 years, and then it's like, nope, now I'm going to become
well, like Old Testament God versus New Testament God are two very different gods.
And like I said, I have to admit, I haven't read that in a while, but the last time I read it, I was thinking, that works out if so
it kind of does. And I like the idea that God is just a weird little trickster that just is amusing himself. It makes a lot more sense with how the world works than the usual stuff. But
I was gonna say, like, a lot of what we call the theodicy problem, which is the why do bad things happen to good people. It's kind of it's tied to this idea of like, it's if you believe that that God is all powerful and all benevolent, then nothing makes sense. But why do we have to hold on to those two ideas? Again, if you have a dog and that dog is, something bad happens to it, I'm sure the last thing they're going to think is, why didn't André protect me?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, they perceive you as
that's
powerful,
true.
And all loving, and but from their perspective, so why do we assume, just like, well, back to Grant Morrison in Animal Man, like, he doesn't overtly state this, but it's clear that part of the idea of the Animal Man story is, why do we assume that God creates out of benevolence when we only ever create out of need? We create because our reality is so terrible, we need to create something else to distract us or amuse us or escape into. So why do we assume that if we were created, it has to be out of benevolence?
And I think you just fell on Preacher by Gareth Ennis. That's literally what God's motivation is just, especially, they really lean hard into it in the adaptation on in the AMC show, that God needs validation, and he needs to be loved, and that's really what it's all about, more so than anything. Just it's punishing and worshiping. And I think, if you've seen that show, I think the depiction of God in that show is one of the most terrifying, but also interesting I've ever seen.
I stopped watching that in the first season because it was taking so long to get to where the comic started.
That's true. Season 2 is where it really picks up. But yeah, they sort of cherry pick from different parts of the story and mix them around in different places.
Yeah.
But that whole first season was almost like a prequel to the series, kind of.
Yeah.
But it all took place before the first panel of the comic.
That's true. Yeah. Well, then they brought in the meat guy. I can't remember his name. Quinlan, whatever Cannon. That's right. He's in the intro story, but there's a great, if you get to the end of that season, there's have you seen it, Rand, the show? Yeah. So that whole bit in the last episode where all the townspeople have been confronted with the idea that God has abandoned Earth, that he's done with humans, he's gone. And it just shows all these people that have lost their hope going through their lives and just letting go of everything until eventually the town just explodes. but it's just like this, and they have the sad cover of No Rain by Blind Melon playing while it's just showing everybody trudging through lives being miserable and realizing that like there's no God anymore, there's nothing that has any meaning. And it's such a sad but interesting little medley that I don't know, it's one of my favorite ends to a season I think I've ever seen.
I feel the need to point out that you just mentioned a sad cover of No Rain by Blind Melon, as if the original is so upbeat and happy.
That's fair. That's fair. But a sad piano version of it, I guess. Yeah. Piano always seems to make things sadder. I don't know why. But that's amazing. So you guys have anything else coming up? I mean, with COVID, I guess you're probably hunkered down as well, but
yeah, a bit. I mean, obviously, the vinyl release, is forthcoming. And
is that going to have a main? Is that only through the Kickstarter, or is that going to be out in the main place?
No, it's going to be. Once. I mean, it's as you may know, vinyl manufacturing is really backed up right now.
Yeah, I've heard that.
So it's going to probably take 6 or 8 months to get the vinyl back, and that's actually a huge improvement over even 6 months ago. They were saying a year and a half.
Is it just because the supply chain can't get the materials to make the vinyl, or is it just there's not enough to keep up with demand?
I mean, it's a combination of the supply chain issues and the fact that since the pandemic, a lot of the major labels have kind of caught up to the interest in vinyl, and they're really kind of doubling down on vinyl, and so and basically they're able to pay more, so there's they're putting them at the front of the line,
of course.
But this is being done through a label called Needle Juice. Mm-hmm. And so Needle Juice is a great little, kind of vinyl specialty label. And, once, the vinyl is delivered to the people that pre-ordered, it will be available, through Needle Juice, as well to,
awesome.
And so, they're definitely planning on giving it, a bit of a push. Obviously, if we ever, get back to doing shows, like we'll have the albums with us to sell at shows and, through our website or whatever. The other, we've finally, during the pandemic, we finally set up our, Bandcamp pages. Mm-hmm. And so, if you use Bandcamp, you can order our CDs or, purchase our albums digitally through Bandcamp. All of Ookla is available through Bandcamp, as well as Adam put out a solo album in 2005, which is available digitally through Bandcamp.
Oh, awesome. Oh, definitely check that out. I didn't know that.
I have a little side project called Via Bella, which put out a record in 2018, which is available through Bandcamp. And I just put out a solo album in 2021. That is also available through Bandcamp. So all that stuff's there. Adam and I we're starting to write again. We're trying to kind of figure out, what the path forward is for Ookla as far as, writing and recording and performing. And, so we're starting that process by trying to write and see what we come up with. But in the meantime, we're also, we've been kind of going over some of our unreleased stuff, and we're kind of putting together we're just going to put together a series of digital EPs that we're going to put out through our Bandcamp page.
Nice.
Throughout the year to stick, the stuff that we think people would be interested in. We do have a Patreon as well, where, we just finished, kind of doing a year-long analysis of Smell No Evil, because that album last year, 2021, was the 20-year anniversary of Smell No Evil. This year is the 10-year anniversary of Nerdvana and the 25th anniversary of Less Than Art. So we're going to kind of go over those. And what we tend to do on the Patreon page is release kind of demos or process tracks or unreleased versions of songs, from those recording sessions, and then do kind of detailed liner notes of all the songs as we go through those albums. And we've also been, here and there releasing either newly recorded demos or kind of old songs, like I said, that we discovered that, oh man, we never, we found, and I showed it to Adam, and Adam didn't even remember it, but at some point, I don't know, around maybe 2015 or so, Adam, you did a really amazing re-recording of Super Scroll.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it has some, it's got some, it's a couple changed lyrics. A couple of it's got some there's the thing where you shift into minor at one point. It's really interesting melodically, and it's just a lot of fun. And that's something that I put that up on the Patreon page, for people to enjoy. So we're trying to kind of stoke the fires a bit, and
Awesome. One thing I was impressed about, because I just I got the email that was sent around about the the fulfillment where you got to fill out your address and stuff to get them when they're ready. And I was skimming through, because it's been a while since I backed it. The levels that you could get some of the products, and like you guys went pretty deep on some of the options you let go out there. Like instead of just vinyl and CD, there's the USB of your entire catalog, and as a mini disc, like for limited edition
and cassette, mini discs and cassette.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of demand for mini discs still in the market that I'm unfamiliar with?
I gotta be honest. When we signed the contract, and I have to admit, like, because of this is pushed back because of the pandemic. We actually signed this contract in 2019.
Oh, okay.
With Needle Juice. But when we signed it, they were going to do cassette and 8-track. But apparently, from what Jace, the guy that our contact guy, Needle Juice, said that like there's been a bit of a resurgence of interest in mini discs. So I'm like, whatever, man. You know what I mean? If we can get enough money to pay for the graphic design, sure. Let's do it. But yeah,
I have. Do you even play a mini disc on?
A mini disc player,
yeah.
Which is
one of those?
No, the only reason I know what it is, like I'm 36. And the only reason I know what one is because the theater group I'm in, when I joined them when I was 19, they still had their music cues done through a mini disc player.
Mini disc. Wow.
And then one guy had to like make them at home because he's the only one who had the technology to record in the mini disc with the sound cues, like gunshots or whatever they need to use or music.
Right.
And it was only like 10, 15 years ago that I convinced him to get rid of it. I'm like, you can just like, someone's like, we can just plug a laptop in and do the same thing. We don't got to carry around this massive cabinet. This like with all this like speakers and hardware and mini disc players, you can just do it with a laptop, even an iPad now. Like,
oh, by the way, Andre, let me tell you. I mean, I've been since this thing got funded, I've been working on this USB file that you mentioned. And are you going to be getting that?
No, I didn't get that one.
Well,
I have I have a lot of your stuff already, but I didn't realize there's going to be a lot of extra stuff on there.
Well, yeah, we're doing like all of our out of print albums.
Oh, really?
Included.
Oh, no.
And several unreleased concerts.
Ah, shoot. Is it too late to change my backing?
I don't know. that I don't know. And then, but you'll be getting we also put together like a collection of rarities and outtakes for both Nerdvana and Versus Evil.
Yeah.
And
there's a digital thing for that. And
that you'll be getting. And that's, there's at least one alternate version of every song from both projects, as well as what was Adam? What were you talking about? It's got the the abandoned demo for Molecule Man.
Oh, really?
Demo for Ultron, and the unfinished that abandoned demo for Arkham Asylum. Like some songs from Versus Evil that we just kind of like, yeah, that's not really going the direction we want, but it's still certainly interesting and funny. And so there's definitely some stuff of interest there.
Awesome. Well, you know what? I plan at the end of this podcast, with your permission, of course, to play one of your songs. So do you guys have a suggested one that you would like to play?
Oh, man.
That would encompass your... I don't want to put you in the spot. I can pick something.
Wahaha.
Yeah, that's what I was leaning towards.
Well, there you go.
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah, it's kind of a smorgasbord.
Yeah, it's a great song. I mean, like I said, I've been a big fan.
Yeah, it's funny. I found there's the original instrumental demo that kind of became that. Adam, when you sent that to me, Adam wrote the music for that, the guitar riff or whatever. And when he sent it to me, and it was just like that with him laughing at the chorus. That was pretty much, just like the riff and wah. And then you sent it to me, and you just called it waha, maybe ?
And I love that song.
Talked about a song, but we didn't, we tend to, one of the things that's, I guess, unique or different about us is that we tend to start with an idea for a song and then write a piece of music that we think would be a good foundation for that idea. And then we kind of write a text for what the song is going to be about. Then we write a melody that sells that text, and the lyrics usually come last.
So do you break up the parts of that between you, or is it just something that's totally between both of you for all the parts of it?
Sometimes it's whoever gets to it first.
Done both of those.
Yeah, oh, really?
A lot of the times it's whoever gets to it first. Sometimes we'll be in the room together and we can't even tell you who did what, because we're like, it's like racing for the next chord or the next line. And then like on Versus Evil, there's a couple examples which, where like, we tend to work on like a, online file sharing. And there's a couple examples, like Amora is one, and the bridge to Bizarro World is another, where I was just experimenting. I just wrote lyrics, without any melody in mind, which is something we don't usually do. And then Adam, like with Amora, I remember you like called me, or you're like, back off, man. You're like, I want a piece of that,
Finished. I remember Amora. I felt like those lyrics, even by Rand Bellavia standards, were extremely good. So I made sure that the melody of that song was, even by Adam English standards, was extremely good.
Yeah, that's a great one too.
I feel that one of the best decisions that Rand and I ever made was very early on. We decided not to take individual credit for songs. This song, lyrics by this person, music by that person. This song, completely written by this person. We just share all the credit. Words and music by Rand and Adam. And that has really enabled us to, neither of us cares who wrote what. And years later, it's like Rand says, we don't even remember who wrote what part of what song.
So you guys weren't predicting a Beatles style breakup during your inception?
Really not. We also, and I think, the other thing that I like, the kind of, I think that was really fortuitous about doing that for us was that, when it's separate, I mean, a couple of things. One, when it's separate, like if that's an Adam song and I know how to make it better, but I don't want to make it better because then his song will be better. It's that kind of stupid competition, that's totally eliminated. And it's like, but it also gives us bravery to say, Adam, that lyric needs, I want that lyric to be better. Or Adam to say, hey, Rand, that melody, can I give that melody a turn? Can I, so it just, I don't know, it works out really well because, we're both, we both care very deeply about, the music and the lyrics. And, and again, like I said, we certainly are obviously capable of writing songs, separately. It's, and that's one of the things that's funny is that, like there are a couple of songs where it's like, oh no, Adam wrote that song in its entirety without me at all. Or I wrote that song entirety without Adam. Or here's a song where Adam wrote all the lyrics and I wrote all the music, and those are rare, but those do exist. And it's always surprising to people when they find out which is which, because I think, because part of it is that we're kind of trying to impress each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think part of the secret of our ability to continue to work together and enjoy it is that, we kind of each secretly think that the other one is more talented,
That's refreshing. It's nice. It's nice when you see groups that are, or partnerships that are, you can tell the people involved are like super friends. I remember I was sad when I found out that like Penn and Teller aren't like great best friends. They just work together and that's it. It's like they just go home. They don't really hang out outside of work. And I was like, that's sad. They seem like they'd be good friends. Why don't they hang out?
I remember like Henry Rollins, when he was talking about meeting Paul Stanley and how he talked about like he was talking to him. And then he said something about like, next time I'll ask Gene about that next time I see him or whatever. And he was like, and I was kind of disappointed because I guess I just imagined that they like had bunk beds together. He just like in his mind, like, like, what do you mean next time you see him? You're going to see him in a half an hour, right? When you go home, you'll see him,
Brandon and I totally had bunk beds when we were together in college, so.
I would not imagine it any other way. I feel like that's
exactly.
In my head, that's canon. That'll be my big expose I'll post on the site, no, this has been amazing, guys. Thank you so much for being on. I don't want to pick up any more of your time than I already have.
Pleasure.
No, this is great. And hopefully, like I said, hopefully we can get some new songs written and recorded. I mean, I know like Adam's been, I've been kind of working on this stuff for the Kickstarter campaign. Adam's been kind of working on resetting up his recording studio.
Yeah, so we're working on some theme song for somebody's podcast or something.
Oh yeah,
doing some commission work, and yeah,
it's all right. It's I kind of dig it.
It's it's funny because when Rand gave me permission to use your music, I was super happy because you have so many songs that kind of just work. And it took me forever to pick what I wanted to do for this one. Because when the podcast started, it was originally my COVID kind of project, which was just I was going to talk about the ridiculous comic history of certain characters, like if a new character like Baron Zemo pops up in a Marvel film, it's like, well, here's his history. And it was fun, but then I kind of realized I would to break it up, I would have an interview with someone in the comic industry or someone that I get a hold of that would want to be on. And so initially I used and I was using superpowers for the theme song, which I still use, just because I feel like it's such a great little origin, to all these people. But eventually I just kind of realized I really liked doing the interview portion way more than just writing the histories of these comic characters, because people go on YouTube and watch them in like 30, they have like 2-minute clips to tell you everything anyway. And so I thought it'd just be funner to do the interview thing. So I stuck with with superpowers, and I really like it as a theme song. It works really well for the show. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. I can't thank you enough, and I'm looking forward to the album, to the vinyl when it shows up, and all the new stuff coming down the pipeline.
Great.
Thank you, Andre.
Thank you.
Awesome. Have a good night.
All right.
Take it easy.
Good night.
That was my conversation with Rand Bellavia and Adam English of Ookla the Mok. What a great talk. I'm glad you guys got a chance to listen to it, and I hope you enjoyed it. I really can't stress enough that you need to go listen to their music. If you haven't before, now is the perfect time. Their album, Versus Evil, just is going to be out on Needle Juice soon to purchase on vinyl, which I did the Kickstarter, which is over, but you can still purchase it through that website. I think they have advanced orders now. If not, definitely check back for when it's out so you can buy your own copy. I mean, they're on all the usual music stuff, Apple Music, Spotify, all that sort of stuff. But definitely listen. I think you will find songs that will connect with you, not just on a, hey, that's a character I like level, but also on a community amongst various parts of nerddom. And they celebrate it all. And it's wonderful, wonderful music. But I did mention in the interview with them that I want to play one of their songs at the end to get you acquainted with their music. And as Adam English suggested, Mwahaha is the song, one that I was thinking I would probably use if they just told me to leave it up to me. So it was perfect. He suggested what I thought would be a good choice. So I'm going to play it for you now to play us out. So I'll be back in 2 weeks with another featured interview. Not quite sure who that is yet. I have a couple irons in the fire, but I'll announce it on social media once it is nailed down. My name is André. It's been a real pleasure being your host for this episode. And I can't thank Ookla the Mok enough for being on. It was a real honor. So here is their song to play us out, Mwahaha by Ookla the Mok. I'll catch you next time.
Lashed to the railroad tracks. I twirl my mustache and let my eater laugh. I stroke my cat and then I steeple my hands. But my smoking bat as I reveal my plans. Now this lie still and die while I try to decide what bad guy line applies in my diatribe. How about no, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. Or maybe kneel before Zod or give yourself to the dark side. From hell's heart, I stare at thee. Or wait until they get a load of me. How about mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? Fools that may challenge the will of doom. Yeah, I get you, my pretty, and your little dog too. Revenge is a dish best served cold. I did it 20 minutes ago. Take whatever booty you can find, but remember the beast is mine. I'm moving up to kidnapping, should be more polite. Yeah, but dance with the devil in the pale moonlight. Just when I thought I was up, they pull me back in and call off Christmas curses foiled again. Who fights and runs away? Resistance astute, are you be assimilated? Now while you hang there and consider your fate, should I say release the hounds or just say exterminate? I have something to say. It's better to burn out than to fade away. Did I ever tell you how I got these scars?
I think the word you're looking for is
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
impressive, but you are not a Jedi yet.
It puts the lotion on.